everybody, welcome to your video over cross-site scripting. This is a hacking method. This is an introduction, so I'm not necessarily going to be telling you what you need to do in order to do this hack. I'm basically going to be telling you how it works, why it works, and how it's done in general terms. So after this video, you will have a general understanding of cross-site scripting, or XSS for short. And I'm not saying you'll necessarily know how to do it yourself, but you'll easily be able to figure that out after this video. So, cross-site scripting. By the way, if this video is helpful, be sure to subscribe and like this video. Cross-site scripting is basically a general hacking method used on websites. It's based off of the principle that you can hide scripts behind URLs and web pages. So a URL, that is what you type in to go to a web page. So this is an example. It's a uniform resource locator, basically just the website. You can hide scripts behind URLs, and you can also hide scripts on web pages using a script tag. So if you put a script tag on a web page, it's not going to show up on the web page because script tags are hidden in the source code. So they're still on the web page, you just can't view them. So JavaScript, you're not going to see the JavaScript code when you go to a web page. It's going to be hidden, although it can still be executed. So that is the basic principle of how cross-site scripting works. Having people run these scripts, which then does something to their computer or to their accounts, so forth. Cross-site scripting is one of the most common hacking methods, if not the most common, along with SQL injections and brute force attacks. So, since it's pretty common, it's important that you know about cross-site scripting. Basically, the scripts that are used are known as client-side. And basically that means they are scripts that are sent to the computer. So if you have, let's say this is a web application. You have what's known as, well, that was really bad, the back end and the front end, or server side and client side. Alright, so when a person views a web page, so let's say this right here is your web page, you have boxes and so forth that you can submit, and websites and pictures that you can view, all on the front end. The back end is the actual server content that is used to make this web page work. So if you put something in a text box like your username, this gets sent to the server side, which is then stored in a database or something. Does something with it, it doesn't really matter. If you're working with an SQL injection, that is attacking the back end by getting false information submitted into the database. A client-side attack changes the front end to put malicious code on the actual person's computer rather than on the server. This cross-site scripting can also be used to put this client-side code on the server, so every single time someone views this web page, that malicious code is sent to every single user who views that page. So, the actual code being used is client-side. An example is JavaScript. So you would make a client-side script using JavaScript. That's just an example of a client-side scripting code, programming language, or whatever. There's other kinds, but PHP, for example, this is a server-side language. So what we just talked about how cross-site scripting can be used by putting it on the server. So let's say this is the cross-site script, and every single time someone views the web page, it gets sent to that user. This is known as a server-side cross-site scripting. If it's just placed on the client side, and then that page is sent to somebody specifically, that's known as a DOM attack, which, don't worry if you don't know what that means. Basically, the DOM is the actual page being viewed. DOM, I don't really know if it's pronounced DOM or not. But yeah, those are two general classifications of cross-site scripting, and we'll be getting to that more in just a minute. But other than that, you can group cross-site scripting into two major groups. First one is non-persistent. The second is persistent. And now I'm going to be talking about both of these in depth. So first, let's look at the non-persistent. Alright, so non-persistent attacks, an example of this would be searching something in a search engine, but instead of searching a normal term, you search a code that is going to do something maliciously, like hack into your account or whatever it is. Well, if the search engine repeats back what you say, such as if you search, "Hey, my name's Caleb" on Google, it's going to say, "Search results for, hey, my name is Google." Hey, my name is Caleb. So Google sanitizes this information. That means that if you try to put something malicious in there, it's not going to come back on the web page, which can then be sent to other people. So if a website fails to sanitize, I don't know how to spell that, I'm not even going to try. If they fail to sanitize data that is sent into their page and then redisplayed, then you have a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So let's just say Google did not have their inputs sanitized. So you could put whatever you wanted, search it, and it would come up as a script. So if you searched some sort of script, well, then you would have a Google search result, which would then redisplay that script on the page. That link could be sent to someone else, and then when they open that page, that script would be executed, and so forth. That is a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So you can have these scripts be ran through other web pages that redisplay your information, your script that you put into the fields, or you can have a custom-made URL which has the script within the URL. So you can execute JavaScript through the URL, through the search bar at the top, not the search bar, but the address bar. And then if you have that link sent to someone else who then clicks on that link and the code is executed, well, then you have performed a successful cross-site scripting attack. Technically, you would have to, for cross-site scripting, it would be using a safe looking website. So if you sent someone a Google link, well, they're not going to be like, I wonder if that's malicious, because it's actually from Google. So a cross-site scripting attack, the main goal is to get this malicious code on another safe website. So if I successfully put a malicious code on Facebook, for example, using a search result, I send that link and people see, facebook.com well, they're not going to be confused and say, that's a malicious URL. So that would be an example of a cross-site scripting attack. And if necessary, if the URL does look malicious, well, then the attacker can then encode it into hexadecimal or hide it behind HTML on another web page. So if you're actually using a friendly website and you get that malicious code on there, well, then that's good. Well, I mean, if you're hacking, of course. If you're getting hacked, it's bad. Or if you're just using your own custom URL, then you can encode that. Like if you have your script within your URL, you can encode that into hexadecimal and have that sent to another person, which can then type that link or click that link, which will execute the code. So that is an example of a non-persistent. It's a one-time thing. The database, so if we go back to our little box here, this is the server side, this is the client side. The non-persistent is only going to modify the client side information. Nothing is being sent to a database, which then gets constantly sent to other people. So that's the difference between non-persistent and persistent. So a persistent attack, that is where the actual database or the server side is infiltrated. That script is then given to the actual web server, which then unknowingly sends that script to all kinds of other people. So the classic example of this is a social network. So if you have a page, you have your profile picture and your name, and you have a status like what you're doing, and then oftentimes you'll have an information box about you. So you can say, oh, this is the about me. Well, you can be like, I like music. But then, when you're editing this page, you can secretly hide a script within this about me. Because it's within a script tag, it's not going to be displayed to other people because script tags are hidden. Otherwise, all your JavaScript code, for example, would be viewed by everyone, when really you just want the website to be displayed. And if you really want to know the script, you can check the source code. But basically, you hide this script behind this page, and then this is saved on the server. So all this information is given to the server, and if they fail to sanitize it, they're going to, okay, it's good information. Now, when Billy or Bob or whoever goes to this web page, this profile, this script can either be through a link or hidden on the web page will be executed, which will then affect Bob, and then so forth. Now, there's a type of cross-site scripting. So if the actual script affects all of the users the same, so we start with the hacker. So let's say I'm the hacker, Caleb, and Bob views my web page. And 3 people view Bob's web page or my profile. Well, if I'm able, if I can get Bob to fall for this trick and maliciously use the persistent attack on the database, here's what it's going to look like. The database sends this script, posts it on my profile every time someone views my profile. Well, Bob views my profile. Well, now, not only is my page infected, well, Bob's page can be infected, if that's so wished by the hacker. And then everyone who falls for it on Bob's page also gets infected. And we get this worm, which spreads throughout this social network and pretty much affects everyone because everyone gets affected by viewing pages. This process, where the actual script is sent to other accounts and spreads, is known as a self-propagating script. So that's this is probably the most deadly version because it affects everyone. So far we had persistent, non-persistent, and the self-propagating persistent. So basically, the non-persistent did not affect the server. The persistent actually modified server content by saving it through that About Me box, which is then sent to other people, which retrieve information from the server by going to that person's profile. Well, self-propagating basically spreads that throughout. The non-persistent, which only affects this one, that one's the most common. The persistent actually affects the database. That one's not nearly as common, but it's much more deadly because the actual server is giving out this script freely and they don't even realize it until they get reports of the happening. Alright, now that you know the basics of cross-site scripting, I'm going to be telling you the most practical use for this cross-site scripting attack. The most common use for a cross-site scripting attack is to steal a session. Alright, so in order to understand this, you need to understand the basics of how web pages work. And specifically, like accounts and stuff. So, when you go to this web page and you click on something or you do something, it makes a request to the server. So, here you have your web page, and here you have the server. Okay? Now, if you log in, you're into your account, and then you want to view profiles or change your settings or upload something. Every single time you do that, you're making a request to the server. Now, in order to make web applications easier, they make it so you don't have to log in each action. You stay logged in even though you're making all these requests as your account. The way this works is using what's known as a session. So the sessions are held on the server, and basically it just says, alright, this person has access to the website. These are then sent to, the session is sent to the client, and they are sent as what's known as a cookie. So I'm sure you've probably heard of internet cookies. We're not talking about actual cookies, although that would be pretty cool. The session content is stored within the cookie. So that's just basically saying, okay, this person has access to this stuff. And that way, you don't have to load all the same stuff over and over again. You have the cookie to do that, to say that you get the point. This is a very basic explanation of how sessions and cookies work. And you can go into a lot more detail, but that's all I'm really going into for now. Well, once this client gets the cookie, or the file, this file, or the cookie, has what's known as a session ID. So this cookie has a session ID. And this session ID basically says, okay, this is that person. So let's say you sign up as Caleb. Well, you get this cookie which has your session ID, which grants you access as Caleb. Well, the main practical use for a cross-site scripting attack is to steal this session ID from somebody else. That way you can do actions as that account. Alright, so let's say we have another client down here. Alright, and we're just going to restart. So now, all you got to think about is you have two people. The top one is the hacker. It's just a normal user. This person is the admin, or the administrator of the website. This server hands out the sessions to these people who are both signed in. Well, this hacker, you can do some sort of cross-site scripting to get the session ID of the administrator and send it to the server to do things as an administrator, or to get administrator privileges, even though typically he wouldn't be able to do that. So if the administrator has the ability to add or delete accounts or ban people, well, if the session is taken from the administrator by the hacker, well, then that hacker has the ability to delete people from their servers and so forth. So it's very dangerous. Another use is, let's say this is just another user, and you have all your public information available. So your name and your profile picture. But behind this, you have private information, such as your credit card. So if this is a shopping website, such as Amazon or something, which I don't know if it'll even work on Amazon. I'm sure they have pretty high security. But if this is a beginner website that doesn't know much about e-commerce, well, they are at risk of cross-site scripting to begin with if they're not really good at what they're doing. So they need to be very careful, because if this hacker is able to take this session from this user, instead of the user getting the session ID, this hacker gets the session ID. And only the user can view the credit card, which should never happen anyways, but this is a bad design website. So only the user can view the credit card. But if the hacker gains that session ID, it can request that information from the server as the user, even though it's not the user. And then this hacker gets access to the credit card number. That's an example of stealing a session ID from another user. Alright, now that you know the basics of cross-site scripting and what it's used for, we're going to be talking a little bit about prevention, but this video is not going to cover that a whole lot. So basically, there is no real sure way to prevent it because there's lots of ways it can be done, but there is ways you can protect against it, and obviously the more you protect against it, the more complicated the code gets to prevent it, and the more work has to be done. So obviously you've probably heard about when it comes to security, the more secure you are, the less functional things get. Cross-site scripting is pretty essential though, so I don't recommend making your website more functional to make it more functional and then allow these vulnerabilities to be made. So I always recommend best possible protection against hacking. Just you don't want to get hacked. So one of the main ways to prevent is to don't make enemies, because if you make enemies, people are going to try and do this to your website more commonly. But I mean, it can still be done. Don't be too paranoid about it though. Not everyone in the entire world is trying to hack your website. I mean, some people may be, but you don't know that for sure. So basically there's no sure way. One of the common ways is to convert HTML into the HTML entities. So basically this is the same thing as this. So basically this is going to print out this on the web page, but it's not going to have the functionality as putting this would do. So you have basic, for example, PHP tags, which will get this done. HTML entities is one. There's a function to remove tags completely, and basically the more security you have, the less functional things become. So that's just one of the basic ways it can be done. Check out, there's a prevention manual on OWASP, I think it's called. Look up OWASP XSS prevention manual, and that will tell you some of the ways that you can prevent cross-site scripting. Another great thing to remember is don't rely on your coding skills too much. So some of you who have followed me, you'll know that I think that if you're prideful, you are more susceptible to mistakes and hacking and so forth. So don't think your website has the best code ever and it's unbreachable. The Titanic wasn't supposed to sink. So if your code's not supposed to get hacked, it probably will. So don't have that mindset that it won't get hacked. Go out of your way to figure out how you can prevent XSS, cross-site scripting. And you may need to use forms of plugins or frameworks and so forth to get that done in a better way. So yeah, that's just the basics of prevention. So the main one is stripping tags from HTML so people can't hide script tags. Like if this doesn't work, well, the people are going to have a harder time cross-site scripting your web page. Another thing is keep backups of your web page. So if you do have a script on your web page that's being sent to other people, that would be a persistent attack. You don't want to always have that on there, so you want to either find it and erase it, or more safely, back up the core code to a previous state that's not going to ruin your web pages, and so forth. So yeah, keep regular backups, always check for cross-site scripting, and ask people to report problems or hacking attempts if necessary. So I do recommend a report option. So those are the basics of cross-site scripting. And now I'm just going to do a quick review of everything that we have learned. So in review, cross-site scripting is getting a malicious code piece onto a website or within a URL or so forth. This will often be done on trusted websites that have an XSS vulnerability. So if I can get a malicious code onto a Facebook page or something, and other people view that, that's an example of cross-site scripting, and that's dangerous for Facebook and all the people using Facebook. So the two main forms we talked about were non-persistent and persistent. A non-persistent thing is going to be a one-time thing that affects the... So if here's your web page, this is the server, this is the client side, basically back end, front end. The non-persistent is going to affect the front end by either having a search result submit that code, or a way to have that displayed on the temporary client side code, the HTML, the JavaScript, all the client side code. By affecting that temporarily, we'll have a non-persistent attack. A persistent attack actually affects database information, such as an About Me on a website. If you can hide code in that About Me, which other people are going to view, that's an example of a persistent attack. We also define these as this side would be server, and this side would be a DOM attack, DOM. So those are your basic types of cross-site scripting. A common use of cross-site scripting is to steal your session ID, which will be sent within a cookie. So the session is stored on the server, which then gets sent to the client. The client has a cookie, which basically says, alright, this cookie is connected to this session, and it has a session ID. Well, if a hacker is able to steal the session ID of another person, he can make requests to the server as this person, so he can figure out their personal information and so forth. If you make... Whoa, drop my chalk eraser. So if you make a cross-site scripting attack to where anyone affected also puts that code on their page or does something with that code automatically using that script, well then you make a self-propagating code attack. So if it's self-propagating, that means you have one person affect one person or two people, and then these people also put that code, which this guy created, on their profile. So this guy has this code, the little circle's the code, and when they get affected by this code, they don't know this, but they're also putting that code in their profile, and then each one of these people infect people, and you basically get this thing which spreads around the social network like wildfire, because anyone viewing these profiles gets affected, and then sooner or later over half the people on the entire network are infected, and it's impossible to get away from the thing without just not using it. There I was looking for my eraser, and it's all the way over there because it flew. So yeah, as for prevention, the best way to prevent it is to follow that prevention guide and be careful on what you allow people to submit. Oh, another thing on prevention is to use, I think it's called whitelisting rather than blacklisting. So basically, if you have a form on a website, so where you submit stuff, so let's say this is a comments page, which is going to be displayed on your website. you have your name, you have your email, and then you have the actual comment. Well, to check if this content is correct, you'll look at it and say, oh, well, this doesn't have any malicious code, so it must be good. It's not in the form of an email, so it must be good. Well, that would be blacklisting because you're looking at all of the things that it's not. The better way to do it is to look at all of the things that it is. So you would say, okay, is this in the form of a name? If it is, it's good. Then this email, don't check if it's not in the form of something else. Check if it's in the form of an email. And if it is, it's good. As for the body, don't check for, well, yeah, you should check for HTML tags and all this stuff too, but make sure that the comment has genuine information about your website, or basically look for things that make this what it is, not what it's not. And if that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. It's not that big of a deal. But that's another example of prevention. Most common way is to strip certain HTML tags and change them into what's known as the HTML entity, which the one I used earlier, I can never get this right, was this, which is the HTML entity for less than. So that is the basics of cross-site scripting. Hopefully that video was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave a comment, and if you would like to help me, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and send this to all your hacking friends or whatever. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.